Do you ever just look around and you say, man, that artwork is just not pretty. That design just looks terrible. For me, this is an everyday occurrence. I go to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. I see terrible designs everywhere I go. But I also see great designs everywhere I go. And this is what I want to do: make great designs. My name is Eleanor Stevens, and I'm here to tell you my full self story. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of artwork. I used to just draw all the time. Just whatever. I would draw dogs, cats, television shows. I would take my favorite television shows and turn it into a comic book or a storybook. I used to do that a lot with The Simpsons. The Simpsons was my favorite show growing up. And, I didn't care. It was what I loved to do. But it's not always what everybody else loves to see you do. If you're not the best artist in class, sometimes it's just, why are you even doing art? For me, I enjoyed it. And there's a saying that I was taught by an art teacher many years later that was, be the child. Just be the little child. The child doesn't care if its art looks terrible. The child doesn't care if what it's doing doesn't look like a person. If it's drawing a person and it looks like a couple of squiggles and it's Auntie Jane, it's still Auntie Jane to the child. Because the child has freedom. And unfortunately, in our society, we lose that little child. We lose that ability to draw and paint freely, to enjoy what we're doing. And as a designer, we need to hold on to that. We need to be the child. We need to have childlike eyes and look at things in new ways and interpret them in new, different designs. Don't worry about what's been done before. Don't worry about the past. Just go forward. Do what you want to do. And that's how I personally feel about design. I do look at the past. I do look at older designs. I love looking at old designs. I love looking at old Italian designs. And I feel I can learn from that. But I don't think I should be held back by that too. I shouldn't look at them and say, oh, I'll never be as good as the great masters. The great masters were the best. You have to be the best for you. And it requires hard work. And I've had to work hard at it for years. I was never the best in school. I was always kind of the worst, actually. But I kept working, and I kept trying, and I kept challenging myself. Well, if I'm not good at this, then I'm going to get better. I'm going to keep trying to draw. I'm going to keep drawing every day. And in high school, it finally paid off when I was elected as the design editor for our webpage. I was given the task of making the webpage look nice, and this was the 90s. Everybody was still putting terrible MIDI background music up and 16 different colored crazy backgrounds and flashing lights everywhere and turning around under construction signs just so that you'd know that the website was under construction. It took a lot of convincing to my fellow students that we needed to make a uniform background, uniform images, uniform logos, and have them across the whole page. Everything would be the same. Also, it took a lot to convince them that we shouldn't use frames either, which you don't see them as much now. Frames have gotten a lot better, but back in the 90s, frames were just terrible. And it took a lot to convince these people because I was the only girl in a class of entirely men. I mean, well, young men at the time. They were young, the same age as I was, 16, 17. And they listened, but it took a lot of debate. We had some hard times. We had days when people refused to work, but eventually we got it done. We voted, we talked about it. I explained what I was trying to say, that we needed to have a beautiful unified design, and eventually they got the idea. As time went on, I channeled this into my everyday activities. Talking out the problem with people who don't understand what my solution is or what a solution could be. And it's hard, but you've just got to stick to your guns sometimes. If you believe a design has flaws, or you believe a way of working with something has flaws, you've got to challenge those flaws. You've got to challenge, well, why do we do it this way? Why do you want to do it this way? Well, maybe we should all talk about it and see why maybe we can do it another way. And you learn from that. And that's the whole part of the experience with learning to do design, to learn to do anything, to learn to work in a group. And it's fun. It's always got to ultimately be fun. And to me, design will always be fun. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's a chore, sometimes you don't want to do the project. But ultimately, you will do the project because it's what you do. It's always a challenge. Even something you don't like can be a challenge. And I think that's what we need to all carry with us when we do any kind of work. My name is Eleanor Stevens. I'm cleverly creative, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.